I said we moved along swiftly. We do. We go all around the world. We go between different kinds of activity. We go from the hyper-local, not only in Cork, but in an area of Cork, to the global. Are you still there? Good. Are you still breathing in the darkness? Can I invite you? I told you, this isn't television. This is live. And this is what happens when things are live. They fall over. Okay. So, can I invite you to do two things with me? Firstly, I want to invite you to a little exercise. If you have a hand, do that. If you have another hand, do that. If you have two hands, do that. It's very funny. Can you do that and turn to the person next to you? It's just a lovely little thing. Great. It's just for my entertainment mostly, but also it's really good for your brain. If you can, do this. Put one hand or one finger, and as you go up the thumb, breathe in. And when you get to the top, breathe out. When you get to the top, breathe in. And breathe out. And then as you go up, breathe in. And breathe out. Try not to hyperventilate. And then keep going at your own pace until you get to the end. Keep going. And then what we know is, if we had a neuroscience on the stage, they would tell you what's happening with your brain. If we had a dancer, they would talk about that in a very different way. If we had an academic, they would tell you a different story. But I know, because I can feel it in the air, what is happening in this room. For the next session, we're about to whiz around the world. We're going to start with Nisha Sajnani. Are you there somewhere in the light? You are. Would you like to come and join me? So Creative Brain Week has made relationships and partnerships over the last few years. One of the particular ones is with Nisha and the team she leads, about whom she will tell you more. Do you want lectern or do you want there?
I don't have anything to look at here, but I'll stand here anyway, so that way I can see this.
In front.
Perfect. So I should use this here. Yeah, okay, that's perfect. Thank you so much, Dominic, and thank you again for the invitation to join here at Creative Brain Week. It's always a pleasure. I think I've been to 3 at this point. So I'm joining you from New York University and the Jameel Arts and Health Lab, which is an initiative co-founded with the World Health Organization following the publication of their 2019 report looking at the health benefits of the arts. And I'm just showing you a little bit about the lab because each time I've come, I've provided a little bit of an update on some of our initiatives. But for some of you, the lab might be new. So I'm just putting this slide up to talk about the fact that we focus on research, advancing rigorous research on the health benefits of the arts, the relationships between the arts and health, looking at how we translate good evidence into effective policy, the way that we've already been speaking a bit about here in this room, and knowing that that can't happen without good storytelling. And so you see outreach and you see engagement up in that sphere as well, and building capacity across all 3. And these are my fellow co-directors for the lab. The chair of the steering committee is Dr. Daisy Fancourt at UCL. Moving forward. So we don't, of course, do this work alone. We do this in a network with many of you here in this room. We've been working with Dominic and Brian and August and others on some of the initiatives that I'll tell you about shortly, but with a number of labs around the room who have been engaged in this question of what is the relationship between arts and health, be it brain health, physical health, social health, mental health, and so on. And each of these labs represent, in a way, a different concentration of expertise. Some are focusing on epidemiology, some on cognitive psychology, and so on, because we know that this takes complexity science. It takes all of us in order to bring different perspectives to the questions at hand. These are some of the concentration areas that we work on. Whizzing through. Okay, so just a quick snapshot of some of the research. We have a global fellowship in partnership with UCL where we're really looking at sort of the question of arts and population health. This is a recent study that we have actually under review at the moment, and it's looking at the role of arts engagement as a predictor of health outcomes, looking specifically at 15-year-olds, about 400,000 of them, looking at a specific population health survey out of the OECD. Just a quick snapshot. This is a hospital murals evaluation, just to give you a sense of some of our research is actually focused on population health, some on mechanistic science, the how, what is it that is enabling the health outcomes that we see, and some are focused on health outcomes. Here we're looking at the role of murals in hospitals in 4 countries in the US, UK, Slovenia, and Nigeria, and what that's doing for patients, staff, and for visitors. These are findings from a recent scoping review where we can see a great deal of benefits to patients, some for staff and some for visitors. It's a low-cost, multimodal intervention that is yielding a great deal of benefit to those who spend time in that space. And when I was here last, my colleague Niels and I shared a little bit about the Lancet series that we're working on the relationship between the arts and health. That series is still ongoing. We expect that it'll be under review or out by the end of this year. And we're focusing on telling the story in that particular forum of what some of the evidence is telling us about arts and individual health, community and public health, as well as arts in a clinical health context. And then the second paper is looking at a roadmap for policy, for practice, and for research, and it'll culminate with a photo essay looking at really visualizing the relationships between the arts and health across that spectrum. When I was here last, I spent some time talking about how this series was going to focus on non-communicable diseases. So if any of you were here for that part of the story has changed, and those papers that are focused on non-communicable diseases has actually shifted over into a not a nature series, but Nature is taking a look at them across some of their publications. So stay tuned. Those are all under revision and they've been resubmitted. So hopefully we'll see them out in the next couple of months, looking at the arts in relationship to NCDs, including brain health, both on the prevention and promotion side as well as treatment and management. We're actually in conversation with Nature now about the development of a collection across their journal. So stay tuned for that information as well. We hope to be able to lift this up further. We also have 2 policy areas that I'll tell you about. We're working on a policy brief looking at the role of the arts in addressing the health impact of climate change, and another on youth mental health. We know that, again, we're not alone. There are many of you who are working on these kinds of considerations. And we hope to be able to aggregate that evidence, look at excellent case examples from around the world, and put it together in a way that makes it useful for people to be able to advocate for the practice that they're doing, or to lift up that work to result in greater investment and attention. And then finally, in terms of public engagement and outreach, we work with a number of cultural organizations around the world, a number of academic institutions, to be able to mobilize the arts as a health resource. And we always combine those public engagement opportunities with a sharing out of the latest evidence that we've collected, with opportunities for direct practice and engagement, with policy convening so that we can lift up this conversation in spaces where people are making decisions about where to invest their time and money, and then with media and further storytelling, not unlike Creative Brain Week here. This is from a recent convening we held at UK Parliament. This one was focusing on, on a number of things, but one of the areas that we've been focusing on is child and adolescent mental health, and putting forward a series of proposals there. Since we met last time, we held Healing Arts Scotland, which was again an engagement, an example of our outreach work, but this time countrywide, looking at 376 events over across Scotland, and these are some of the policy impacts that came out, including the inclusion, or rather the openness and the willingness of the Chief Medical Officer to include evidence related to the arts and health in the new realist guidelines that are coming forward, as well as a continued engagement with Public Health Scotland to do the same. And we'll be hosting a series of events over the next few years. The next will be the UN General Assembly Healing Arts Week, where we hope to dedicate 2 focused areas on brain health, and then an engagement Barcelona-wide and then Singapore-wide before the end of the year. And that's it. That's my whistle-stop tour.
Thank you so much. So, a whistle-stop catch-up with the Jameel Arts and Health Lab and all things that grow from it. But what we're going to do now is try, and see if it works, to go to the Creative Brain Weeks that have developed in other parts of the planet within the last 12 months. So I'd like to invite Anusha Mohamed to join me and take a seat, and Agustina Barnes to join me and take a seat. But I'd like to go online, and remember that my spectacles are in my pocket and not my head. And I'd like to see Mohamed, Salama. Would you be there? You are. Hello.
Hello. Hi. Hi, everyone. Hi, Dominique.
So Mohamed is a professor in the American University in Cairo. He's also a Global Brain Health Institute fellow, and he was one of 6 different groups of people that we'll all hear from very briefly who were able to take the idea of a creative brain week and adapt it to the place in which they work and live. So, Mohamed, tell us a little bit about how you have got on, what happened, and where do you go next?
Okay, so as you said, we had the Creative Brain Week in Cairo last year as a satellite for the main Creative Brain Week in Dublin. It was the first time, I think, to bring in Egypt and maybe in the Middle East the concept of arts and involving arts and creativity in brain health, because most of the time when we talk about brain health and brain diseases, usually you think about scientific evidence and healthcare, but this was the first time to involve other sectors in the area of discussion about brain health. It was challenging somehow, but we managed to bring several stakeholders, several players. And the amazing thing is that the first day people started to come to explore what we are talking about. The second and third days, they started to be involved. I remember seeing many of the administrative positions in our university start to be involved in playing games or playing drums or playing music. So they start to be engaged. And later on, I noticed that several similar initiatives started to happen in Egypt, even if I'm not involved or didn't play the key action there. However, I was very happy that the concept that there, people started to believe that arts can play a role, that creativity has a room when it comes to discussion about brain health, that everyone can be involved, not only physicians or researchers and scientists. This year we'll be having also a Creative Brain Week in Cairo, but in September this time. And this year I'm thinking of somehow looking from a different perspective. So I like what you have been mentioning in the beginning, that everyone has different perspectives. So when it comes to brain health, so we have researchers, we have clinicians, we have artists. So this year we are trying to provide the scientific evidence of involvement and value of arts and creativity in brain. So we'll be more scientists, but presenting the evidence to academic institutions and academicians that actually, indeed, art can play a role. Art can make a difference. And for that, I think the narrative will be different, the discussion will be different, but definitely will be still connected to the main value, which is creativity and Creative Brain Week, and the value of other perspectives on maintaining brain well-being. So stay tuned, and definitely we'll have an update. Thank you.
Professor Salama, thank you. There is applause from the room. From Egypt, we're going to go to Botswana. We're going to go to Lingani Mbakile-Mahlanza, Professor of Psychiatry in the University of Botswana. Lingani, are you there?
Yeah.
Amazing.
Hello.
Hello. It's fantastic to see you. So, tell the good people in Dublin, what happened? What happened in Botswana? What did you try and do? What ended up happening, and where might you go next?
Yeah. So we also hosted a satellite in Botswana, and we termed it like Mind Matters. Yeah. So with this, we tried to bring together people who are working in the sciences, people working in education, in policy, in the arts, and we really brought them together and trying to dedicate time in raising awareness, in sharing stories, and also in generating knowledge about brain health and mental health. So we had a central focus on attention, connection, and love. And we wanted to talk about this as how it was experienced locally in Botswana. So how we experience this locally in the aim of creating awareness, right? Paying attention to others, being connected to others, loving others. This, we did it through awareness, awareness about mental health as well as brain health. And the idea behind this was really to fight stigma and really to create awareness and educate the public. In this part of the world, we have a really disproportionate gap in knowledge about brain health and mental health. And what we really wanted to do was bridge this gap. Because we have limited resources, limited people to be able to talk about brain health and mental health, what we did is we trained a cohort of students So as Dominic said, I work at the University of Botswana, so I teach psychology students. So we went ahead and trained them about brain health, about dementia, so that they would be the ambassadors, the brain health ambassadors, who would then go forth and spread knowledge and awareness. So we had a whole week packed with very exciting activities. We started with a walk, a community walk, where we walked into one of the nearby villages called Dokweng, holding placards, talking about brain health. And this really drew attention of the locals, because it's an area which is kind of between a rural and an urban area, and people were quite interested. They came and asked us questions. We talked to them about what brain health was. We then a day later, went to a different village called Muchudi, where we went to a community where older people gather for different events. So again, this was an awareness education about brain health. They had lots of questions, and they were really appreciative of us being there. Because some of the feedback that they gave us, that they'd been longing for information, longing to ask questions about what is this thing called dementia. And as I said, because of the stigma as well, it really helped to talk to them about some of the symptoms, about how dementia actually presents. Another event we did in the same week, it was a very busy week. We went to another village called Ramotswa. So over there, we went to a khotla. A khotla is like a local court where people gather to discuss the community events, the tribal events. And over there, we were welcomed by the paramount chief of the Bamalete tribe. And she she really welcomed us, talked about how there's a lot of stigma, a lack of knowledge. And then over there, we had artists, we had singers, and we had what was really nice about this as well, we had intergenerational dialogue and sharing. For example, we had younger and older people sharing proverbs and so forth. And it was like teaching each one, teaching each other and really dialoguing between different generations. And then the week kind of ended with a symposium. We held a symposium at the University of Botswana, where we again brought scientists, we brought policymakers, artists, to kind of celebrate the week's events, right? We had talks, we had dancers, we had poets. It was really interesting. And one thing that we really took away from this was that, going out into communities, involving communities was really beneficial. And the feedback that we kept getting was, please come back. We need you to come on a more regular basis. For example, I remember there was an old man who was at one of the sessions, and he sort of said, you need to come back and talk to my kids because my children don't understand this. They need to be more educated about this kind of stuff that you're talking about. So one of the things that we're hoping to do in the future is, train more brain health ambassadors and just keep reaching out to more communities, because the communities that we reached out to, they were rural communities, but in and around Gaborone, the capital city. And these services or this kind of information doesn't really go out to other parts of the country. And I think people would really benefit from, hearing information. Since Creative Brain Week, we have been on radio quite a bit. We have been on television talking about, the benefits of creativity, on brain health, talking about dementia and so forth. So we're just hoping to keep that going for as long as we can.
Thank you. I'm going to swap spaces with Anusha Yasoda-Mohan. Anusha is a researcher in Trinity and was also with Jayashree, who hopefully will join us online.
Yeah.
There
she is.
She'll be there or something. There she is. Responded to the question of how do you start this in India, a country of 1 billion people. So where Lingani is dealing with urban and rural populations, with all sorts of traditional understandings and developing understandings in a developing country, in India you have a different challenge. So over to you, I'll let you.
Thank you very much, Dominic. Thank you, everybody, for being here. I'm going to do this as quickly as possible. So this is kind of the dementia landscape in India. So we're talking about 1 billion and more people with different cultures, even within the state of Tamil Nadu, where I'm from, and even within Chennai, which is about a 40-kilometer radius city. There are different people speaking different languages from different cultures. The food is different. Everything is different, even within a 40-kilometer radius. So how do we start to plan something like this for 1 billion and more people? So we started to kind of piecemeal this, and we had one in Delhi. So we had a small convening in Delhi, and then we sort of leveraged what was happening in the south, in Bangalore and Chennai. So there are two major cities in the south as well. So this is all quite urban, and I mean, we have to start somewhere, right? We have to start these conversations somewhere. So we kind of piecemeal this into a north and south approach. And the reason we had this in Delhi is because we had this right next to the capital. So in Delhi, what we did in the north was we had this in the India Habitat Center, and we did a small convening. And when was this? It was on May 3rd. And we had a multidisciplinary group of people who were clinicians, scientists, artists, very kind of close to keeping to heart of the Global Brain Health Institute sort of values. And what did we do with these people was that we engaged them in what is called a participatory co-development workshop. And we'll go through some of the questions that we asked them. And we talked to them about brain health related issues and solutions. And kind of, we just wanted to first understand, because in 1 billion and more people, we can't create change. Creating change cannot be the first step. So we just wanted to understand what people's understanding of brain health was. And we did this, we very strategically placed this at the India Habitat Center, which is basically a stone's distance throw, however you say that.
Stone's throw?
Thank you. Stone's throw away from the president's or the prime minister's house. So it was a very strategic place, and we wanted to do this in the north first because there is a huge inequity between brain health services, in terms of academics, in terms of policy, between the north and the south. So we first wanted to start in the north and bring people, and the way we invited people was also that we had people from north, south, east. Well, we kind of north, south, and west, and kind of missed out on somebody coming from the east. So this was geographically represented, people coming from different cultures and stakeholder groups as well. So in the south, we kind of leveraged what was already happening. So thanks to the International Dementia Academy South Asia, which was started by another senior fellow, Sanjeev Saha and Professor Leroy and they've been doing this for a couple of years now. So they usually meet once in Dhaka, which is in Bangladesh, and once in Chennai, which is in India. So we kind of leveraged that, and we also leveraged the first dementia convention meeting in India as well. So we leveraged both of this, and we had 2 events in the south. And this was separately done in June and in November of last year. And again, we had a multi-stakeholder group that was already present. So we were very fortunate to make use of this group. And these were clinicians, scientists, and more interestingly, students, because we didn't get this perspective. We had a few students, but this was more of a very younger approach and a very younger group who was present in both these events. And so we did a co-creative audience engagement. That was more of a workshop style. This was more of an audience engagement style. But we asked the same kind of questions around brain health, solutions, and vision. So one of the common themes that we spread, one of the common themes that we wanted to gather was, what was the vision for brain health in India in 5, 10, and 15 years? And this was a common question we asked in all of our 3 events. And who are the people who we might want to involve? Why might we involve this? How might we start thinking about this? Where do we want to do these? Where do we want to ask these questions and take initiatives forward? And what do these initiatives look like? And who are the people involved in it? And in this slide, we see a very visual capture of a roadmap that people came up with. This is particularly from the Creative Brain Week in Delhi. And this is drawn by our artist who attended the event, Reshu Singh. And she was there and she was documenting this, and this was notes written by her based on what happened in Delhi. So this is sort of a roadmap of the 5, 10, and 15-year plan that came up in Delhi, but very similar to what was said in both Bangalore and Chennai as well. So now we start to sort of understand, and Jayashree, I think, is there, and I'll hand it over to Jayashree as to what our next steps are. And we're also writing this up as we speak. So Jayashree, it's over to you.
Dominic, for the opportunity to be here and experience being in the same space. That's really amazing. So as Anusha was mentioning, we kind of started to talk in a very location specific, but what we've really done now is go from workshops to build a network. And the aim that we have would really be to allow these different voices of people from across disciplines, including unrepresented voices, because India is a hugely diverse country, join this network. And, these people who are passionate about the role that the creativity and the arts has to play in brain health, we're really hoping that these individuals can be change agents to take forward this shared vision for what brain health for India could look like across the years to come. And since we've been talking about kindness as a theme, I just wanted to mention that one of the things that did come up in a lot of the workshops that we conducted was the importance of having safe spaces to nurture brain health. And definitely, I think one of the things that we've seen so far through the collaborations that have started to emerge through people who are part of this network is that kindness is definitely one of the core values at the heart of the network that we're building. So thanks a lot.
Thank you. Thank you, Jayashree. It's great to see you.
Have a seat. Have a seat. Have a seat. So we have 2 more countries to go to. We did have 3, but we have a glitch on the Australia tape, so we'll share that one later on. In Australia, just to give you a sense, what happened, Kim Nayugan and Juanita Wheeler worked across 3 key venues in Brisbane. Their challenge, local challenge, they said, is that in Brisbane, nobody knows that we're fantastic. And there are fantastic things happening in Brisbane, but we feel like we're at the end of the world. We feel that all the exciting stuff is over there in the US and Europe. And so what that event was it used 3 really significant venues. It used a development centre. It used QGOMA, which is the Queensland Gallery of Art. And it used the Brisbane, I got it wrong. No, it didn't. Brisbane Brain Health Centre, which has one of the most extraordinary group of researchers in the world. They did a half day in each session, in each place. They did a similar kind of program to the one that we do, Nothing About Us Without Us, Each One Teach One, No Show Without a Tell, No Tell Without a Show. And so different people stood on stage and told about their expertise and their lived experience and how that connects. And the energy that is developing from that is now phenomenal. At the end of that, there was some fantastic feedback. Both individuals who felt visible and seen and heard, people that were connected in new ways to each other, and now the momentum of that continues to build. But we'll share that when we fix the glitch. What we're going to do instead is jump to Singapore, and hopefully, Professor Sissy Fu, who actually isn't in Singapore today. Hello.
Oh dear. Hello. Can you hear me?
Perfectly
well.
I
hope everybody is doing well. Thank you so much, Dominic, for having me. And hello, everybody from Sharjah, where I have very recently acquired some understanding of what Ibn Battuta mentioned very many years ago in the 14th century, a Moroccan explorer, that traveling makes us speechless and then makes us storytellers. So here we go. This is our very quick jaunt through Singapore satellite of Creative Brain Week in October 2024. I'm very honored to be the project lead for this very first Singapore edition and welcomed around 180 attendees or so, and then amongst them 40 different practitioners, whether from art or from medicine, from psychology or otherwise. So in fact, the conversations bridged age, class and education divides, which is quite unique in Singapore. We have children from the age of 5 joining us to those seniors who really benefit from the various things that are discussed, that they should be a part of that conversation as well. So we've got researchers, policymakers, medical professionals, educators, and of course, art practitioners. And we considered sustainable conditions for art and aging, art and neurodiversity, and art and neuroplasticity. So if we may move to the next slide, please. This is a little bit of a map blown up here in front of you, but otherwise printed out in A3 format on both sides. So on the flip side would be the timetable and the various activities that were happening. You also see that, in fact, all of this is happening in the Creative Cube at LaSalle campus. And right in the foyer, we have a steady exhibition throughout the entire week. If we could make out what is on the screen there, that is a lovely video prepared by Professor Ian Robertson for us on the neuroscience of aging. So we made sure that the neuroscientific marries well with the artistic. And right next to that video screen, we would see Angesia's apparatus for a domestic screen with instructions. And here we have our guest of honor, a Singapore tradition, Professor Mwai Ho, who is the group CEO of Sing Health, also a neurosurgeon, so quite appropriately speaking about his experiences in thinking through his vocation creatively and how it is important to keep a growth mindset and continue to learn also from patients. And of course, patients being an important factor for going together. Next slide, please. At the opening, of course, we also had Creative Brain Week join us from Dublin. We see the finger exercise to help sync our breathing as well as our minds and our hearts. So thank you, Dominic, again. And we might recognize on the screen there, Jayashree joining us, as well as Kim. So from Australia and South Asia, we are also joined by a live audience who is made to think in an embodied way right from the start. So thank you very much for everybody's input to set the tone for our first satellite in Singapore. Next slide, please. We also have speakers and practitioners from various different types of institutions, everything from how to build communities and art practices that are research-based and evidence-led, to the ways in which the National Gallery Singapore has adopted various mechanisms and are in global dialogues around how to engage seniors in its public programming. And of course, we have Peggy Farrow, very venerable dramatist and theater practitioner returning to LaSalle to speak about why drama is important for seniors. Next slide, please. And just in case it looks as though we only have female speakers, we definitely also are inclusive in more than one way. So this is our field trip right in the middle of the week where we went to Enabling Village, where Autism Singapore has a big presence. And in fact, we're in their art faculty, a studio space that different minds come to create work together. So here's a talk in that space, and we have practitioners who are looking at universal design for learning, as well as those who are thinking about neurodiversity in interesting and creative ways, alongside conversations with architects. Next slide, please. And we move to our final day, which ends on a Saturday. Here we are back on the LaSalle campus on our fake grass or frass. The statue that we see with the figure holding the fish, that is by our founder, brother Joseph McNally from Ireland. And we have marked out an area for a potluck picnic and also fun and games, and specifically mind games. So for anybody who hasn't had a chance to encounter this collaborative game called The Mind, we see that it is a game for young and old, and actually something that requires concentration in order to collaborate and get in sync with particular brainwaves of the people who are sitting around and playing that game collaboratively. Next slide, please. And this is the grand finale of Creative Brain Week Singapore, where we brought back Dominic and also Dr. Trudy Meehan from Ireland, who is a positive psychology researcher and also a clinical psychologist. Because of our encounter in March 2024 in Dublin, we were able to be entrusted with Trudy's research on body mapping, specifically on where love is mapped in our bodies. So with her guidance, there is a small team at LaSalle that ran and facilitated the workshop. We had over 100 participants here. We have laid out all the body maps on the stage floor of the Creative Cube, and from then on ended the entire week with a conversation about where love could be situated after connection and after attention. That was a very rich conversation from art, design, medicine, and elsewhere, and really set the tone for what the next Singapore satellite can do. But for now, I think in order to make space for epistemological access, I'm just going to end my little tour of Singapore and hand things back to Dominic.
Professor Fu, thank you. So we've been around the world. We've been to Singapore by way of the United Arab Emirates. We're going to end up in Argentina. It is my great pleasure to be sat by Professor Agustina Barnes and online to have Alejandra Davidchuk, hello, who will give us a whistle-stop tour of what we've been doing in Argentina. Alejandra, over to you.
Yes, sure. Hello, everybody. Well, I'm very happy to be here today to present the results of the Creative Brain Week Argentina 2025 and all the events that we have before that to have alive the festival. With the initial support of the Atlantic Institute, the GBHI and the BrainLab Institute at the Universidad Adolfo Ibáñez in Chile, a group of fellows and a number of local professionals started two projects in Argentina with two questions in mind. Can we bring brain health, science, and the arts together in communities where none of this is usually accessible? Could we make music, science, and joy part of the daily life for kids and young people growing up in places facing deep inequalities? Well, the answer is yes. And we have the pleasure of co-designing a 12-week multi-component intervention with local musicians, educators, and neuroscientists, all together with tutors, ambassadors, and neighborhood leaders and families, help to build the project. No prior experience, no fancy avenues, just a few guitars, curiosity, and commitment. And what happened? 53 kids and adolescents, many of whom had never played an instrument, came together every week to learn, play, think, and share. They talk about sleep, stress, empathy, cooperation, and teamwork. We used mixed methods, pre and post evaluation, to explore changes in music engagement, prosocial behaviors, emotional well-being, and brain health habits. When we analyzed the participant narratives, we noticed a clear shift from individual focused language to more socially connected and collective expressions. Overall, the program helped reduce social isolation and led to improve in prosocial behaviors, mood, and sleep quality. And we are going to publish a paper about the experience that it will be in review for a series of art and health. And at the end of those 12 weeks, something special happened. We didn't want to end it. So we grew up, and we prepare a celebration. In February 2025, we hosted the first ever Creative Brain Week in Latin America, in San Juan, in the province of San Juan, Argentina. It was a community celebration, a festival, a symposium, and a music teacher workshop all in one. Over 400 people came. 53 people and adolescents performed alongside gaucho dancers and other local musicians and children orchestras and murga street performances. Parents cried. The mayor danced. Researchers shared the stage with musicians. It was chaotic, emotional, improvised, and completely real, and it worked. Now, local musicians continue teaching in the 4 locations of the project. Some of them are invited to play guitar in some local music festivals. We have received more than 50 new young groups interested in starting their own music and brain health programs. The model has already expanded to Chile, thanks to the Jameel Art and Center, and we're building an emerging research network across Latin America to study how art, education, and neuroscience intersect in everyday life. Is it perfect? Not at all. We've dealt with power cuts, funding gaps, and last-minute venue changes for the festival, for the Creative Brain Week in Argentina. But that's what makes it alive. It's not a control lab experiment. It's real life with the beauty and noise that comes from it. So can we marry art and science? Not only can we, but we must, because for many communities, art is already their science. It's how they heal, connect, and learn. And if we listen carefully and collaborate ethically, we can help bring evidence, equity, imagination, and also kindness into the same room. Thank you.
Professor Ibanez, what would you add to that?
Not much. I don't have much to say after this wonderful presentation, Ale. The work that you have been done is amazing. And I just want to share some thoughts as a scientist that I think that could be helpful to understand what we can do. I am a researcher that studies the exotypes, or, like kind of environment, how pollution or, water quality, or how socioeconomic inequalities create a kind of biological blending into your whole body and particularly into your brain. So this is a very passive way to do science, if you want, right? Because you just confirm that you expect and you can help, policymakers to make changes. But what happened in the Creativity Brain Week and this incredible intervention that Alejandra shows is that we can bring the universe within. We can bring meaning, something that we have discussed with Brian recently. We can bring a sense of agency. We can bring, inner forces that sometimes, create resilience against these exotypes, these huge exposome factors that are outside and you cannot change. So this is for me the most important message of creativity and health. And, the things that we start to do, we were able to work together with musicians, with local communities, with the families, with the children, with scientists. So we have a paper, we have a pre-post design, we use natural speech analysis, so we analyze the spontaneous speech of the children pre and post intervention, with, bad words were reduced, more prosociality words were emerging, more awareness about many factors. So, but this is real science. It's a science that is alive. And moreover, it's not just science. It's, there are, in academics, forums, there is still discussion what is, multidisciplinarity, what is transdisciplinarity. And I think that transdisciplinarity here is clear. It's going beyond science. It's having impact in the real life, in how the families started to rethinking about healthy habits, how healthy habits can help their children for the future of their children, how scientists understand that they can use their own fancy tools to do something that's more than just papers, right? Or for policymakers to understand that they can really do something for the under-the-served community. So this is the Creativity Brain Week alive. So thank you, Dominic.
Thank you, Agustin. Agustin and Anusha will be around most of this week. Agustin gets to talk tomorrow. We get to talk more tomorrow about exposomes, the second session. If you want to know more about the projects we've just shared, outside to the left-hand side in the exhibition, you can see some details. I'd like to invite you to leave the stage, and thank you for that. And I'd like to thank and invite to the stage one of the people who's been really key in this project developing. You've just seen what we managed to do in year three, can't count. I very much look forward to seeing what we might do in year 7 or 10 or something. And key to that would be the Provost, Linda Doyle. So Linda, if you'd like to join us. It's harder to move around the sort of people online. This space is really complicated.
Thanks, Dominic.
No,
I think it's signed over here. Hello, everyone, and Dominic, thank you so much for asking me to say a few words. So the first of all, I just want to say I'm absolutely delighted that we have yet another Creative Brain Week. I remember Dominic and Brian and Ian coming to me before the very first Creative Brain Week, and it comes as no surprise to me that the ambition was not enough to just have a Creative Brain Week here in Trinity, but to spread it around the world. So there's something incredibly satisfying to feel that we're back here again for this wonderful event, but also to listen to the people that we just heard and the success of Creative Brain Week around the world. And you asked that I just make a few reflections on that, and I have to say that a couple of things stood out to me when I heard the wonderful speakers that we were just listening to. So, I mean, one of the things that stands out to me the most is how undaunted all of you are. So this is a huge problem. It's a complex problem. When I heard the person from India speaking about the large numbers of people with dementia there, you know, it reminds you what the world is facing. And something that I've always been very, very proud of the Global Brain Health Initiative here, or Brain Health Institute here, I should say, and all that they do. But that being undaunted by how complex and big a problem this is has always struck me as amazing. And I saw that time and time again throughout the presentations we just heard. The other thing I think that comes across really, really strongly is a sense of excitement and commitment that people have. And in each of the locations around the world that we just heard from, you know, that is what bubbles over. A real belief in this, a commitment to it, an excitement and a passion. And I think there's something pretty amazing, Dominic, that passion that I feel from all of you here, you can just see it so much alive in everybody. I know that the theme of this year is about kindness and unlocking kindness. And to me, I also see throughout all of those presentations we got kind of acts of kindness and that kind of care that people show for the communities that they work in and the people that they work with. And the other thing I noticed, obviously, that Post-its are the same colour throughout the world. I don't know whether you noticed that. And that we all have such in common in the way we kind of brainstorm in the same way and the way we bring kind of creative activities together, while at the same time there being real big cultural differences. And that's something that's really, really important to me and really important as well from the Global Brain Health Institute here, that cultural difference matter. And we want to make sure that we're not locked into one way of thinking. But I suppose there's one sentence that I want to really just focus on, and that's the sentence about science being alive that we heard towards the end, and that in this work that people are doing, I think it's really important that the research sits side by side the creativity, because that really, really matters. But that description of science being alive in those communities and you really, really appreciating the value of science really matters. And the reason why I say that is because we're currently living in a world where the value of science is being challenged and eroded, where science doesn't matter to many people, where science isn't used to inform policy, where there's been a really successful kind of, I think, attempt at making the public at large sceptical about science, and what are you all doing talking about science over there in a bubble? So one of the things that I found most hopeful was hearing and feeling that feeling of Alejandro and team about talking about that feeling of science being alive in the community. And that's what I think you see playing out in Creative Brain Week. You see care and kindness and love and fun and passion and commitment side by side with research and science, and people understanding the benefit of that. And I think there is no more important time in the world for us to realise how valuable that is, and how we must keep in that fight and ensuring that people, I suppose, appreciate and understand that. And then just a final word. I don't know, does anyone here know, this is a very odd random thing to talk about, but does anyone here know that soap on BBC, and it's a radio soap based on a farming community called the Archers? Does anyone? Anyway, so it's on every evening and it's about 15 minutes long, and I don't know why I listen to it. I'm one of the most urban people I love concrete blocks and the concrete jungle, but for some reason I listen to the Archers and I find it very relaxing. And there's a new character that just came into the Archers this week, and the person had dementia. And he was introduced into the Archers as a really hopeful, happy, contented, ambitious person. And I remember I just was really, really struck, because usually when dementia is introduced into something, it's always introduced as this kind of, this big burden. And of course, I know it's absolutely, a huge, huge challenge. And I hope not diminishing it in any way for people who are suffering from it, but I thought it was just really, really interesting. And I know we can't claim that anything happens because of us in this room, but I thought you have all changed my mind and how I think about dementia and how I think about those things. And it just struck me as there wouldn't have been a portrayal of dementia in that kind of way, and the way I heard. Now, it was only a little scene, but it was just really, really interesting, the way it kind of emerged into the story. And that, for me, when I look at what Creative Brain Week achieves and what all of the research and work and all of the communities that work and do in it, it's about changing people's perspectives. And it just that was just this little moment where I thought, that's an example of a changed perspective, where something doesn't always start from the same point or is understood in the same way. And I see thousands and thousands of those changed perspectives in all of the work I see that you do and the work that's done here in Trinity. And that one this week on the radio was just, I suppose, a way of describing a kind of sense of wonder you feel when you see those changed perspectives, and hope. And hope is the word I most associate with the Global Brain Health Institute here, because, I have hope because they give me hope. I have hope because they're brilliant researchers and scientists. I have hope because they understand interdisciplinarity and the need to bring different cultures and communities together. And hope because you're all just wonderful people that give me that feeling. So with that, I would like to thank everyone who's involved in this event. I know that when you put on Creative Brain Week, that here in Dublin and in all of those places you heard from around the world, it takes a huge amount of commitment. It's usually what people are doing on top of the work that they do already. And I just want to thank everyone who's involved. I want to thank Bea and Helen and all of the team, and Dominic, of course. I mean, for me, you're synonymous with Creative Brain Week, and I think the joy and hope you bring to all of us is just wonderful. So thank you very much.
Thank you.